Hi, everybody. Welcome to this fifth installment of this little podcast series that we're doing. My name is Ray Reek. I'm with Rick Allen, and we're talking about AI. If you've made it through all the rest of these, you're pretty aware of. um, so we've gone through quite a bit thus far, from what is AI, where it's been, where it is now, where it's going potentially, some of the dangers involved in that, some of the good things that might come as a result of that. Um, but whichever way that goes, it's pretty apparent that barring something unforeseen, it's going to be pretty revolutionary and societally societal changing in its effects. So this episode, which may be our final episode for the time being, we want to talk about more of uh, our relation to AI on a personal level, on a familial level, on an individual level. Um, there's a lot of things that we need to think about as this technology comes out into the culture, to prepare to make good choices. And even we're going to consider today, even before on the individual level, is there really anything we can do at this point to stop it? Is it totally out of control already? Um, if is it too late? Are we able to unplug it? So maybe we can start with there, Rick. Sort of give us an overview of what you think the possibility of either stopping or unplugging or really getting a hold of this thing before it gets out of control.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Ray. Yeah. So there's the what are the possibilities, and then kind of what's more realistic. So I'll start with the possibilities. So, you know, as as mentioned previously, there is the Center for AI Safety. There are some people out there speaking about this. Uh, like Elon Musk, and you have the Google. See the guy who's in charge of AI for Google and others. And it's These people are anxiously trying to get the word out, and they're not just focusing on civilians or lay people, but governments and businesses. And that may be very important. We what generally what they're saying is we need to slow this way down. Some are saying stop it. I believe we need to stop it right now in its track. I would side with those people, because even when you're slowing down something that is extra exponential in growth, it's still a fast growth. And from our previous conversations, it should be obvious and should be aware that we are right on the precipice of there's no turning back, or there's no turning it off, so to speak, where it can outsmart us, and where when that it will outsmart us. So we're right there. Some people are saying 7 years. A lot of people are saying 10 years. People that think it's way off in the future are saying 50 years, which isn't that far off. And so, what needs to happen then? Really, what needs to happen is the businesses that are pushing this and driving this for profit need to decide that they're going to do the ethical thing and stop. Um, and they're going to need to do that across the board. Whether we have to force that through legislation or through basically guilty consciencing these businesses on stopping it. I don't know. The problem, one problem I see with just getting the government to do it is that, or any of these solutions really, is who follows that law? Who's going to do that really? Who's going to? Because again, this isn't only happening in the United States. Are we going to offshore it, or are the ones that are in other countries, are they going to ramp it up then and leave us in the dust? Are companies that are in the United States, are they going to stand for that? What I think generally speaking, we know that if countries companies are in another country and they're advancing in the technologies, we're going to do something about that, whether we're going to move to another country or we're going to secretly develop our tech. So it's a very difficult thing to slow down and stop. So personally, I kind of think we needed to do this 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But it is what it is. Here we are. And so thankfully, we do have some very high up there people speaking out, and they're organizing. But if you can tell me a way that they can actually stop it, I'd love to hear it. I really would. We need to take a solution that will actually be effective and utilize it. I'm just having trouble picturing it. I don't see how that could happen. Look at global warming. Whether or not you think that's a threat or not, the world, united, and to some degree we slowed it down here in the United States, right? We kind of leveled off on our emissions, or however you want to measure that. But we know that in other countries, they just completely ignored all that. So even if and we all know how big of a push to stop global warming actually was. It was humongous, and I don't think the AI push is nearly as big as that right now. So that's kind of what in a perfect world, what can be done, what could we do is to convince businesses to stop. So then you get into, well, what's realistic? Let's just assume, because we kind of have to. We have to take worst case scenario here. We don't want to just say take best case scenario. That's kind of irresponsible, in my opinion. So what about worst case scenario? Let's say the government fails, they fail to get the word out, and businesses continue to push as they currently are. Then you get into more drastic measures. I've come up with two solutions. One of them is something humans can do, and one of them is something left up to nature. And again, if anybody can come up with other solutions, I'd love to hear it. A common misconception is we'll just unplug it. But hopefully, as we've been talking, you can understand why that doesn't make sense. It's basically almost in every browser, and most software programs are integrating it now. You have governments implementing it in their just their day-to-day, but also in the militaries and across the board. It's just everywhere. So what do you unplug exactly? What is it that you're unplugging? I don't know that there is anything really at this point, but let's just pretend for a minute that you could unplug it. Okay, well, that's right now. Like, if you were going to, so it has to get to the point where we decide we need to unplug it, but it has to be at the point where we can unplug it. It has to be in that sweet spot. So if we have AGI in, say, 3 years, I'll even say, let's say 4 years. If we have AGI in 3 to 4 years, which it'll probably be before that, honestly. I would say with an AGI, theoretically, we can still unplug things in those 3 to 4 years. But unfortunately, in that AGI time period is when everything's going to be awesome. It's about to get really cool. It's going to make everybody's lives better. We're going to be able, oh my gosh, I can buy a robot that cleans my floor. I can buy the software program or subscribe to the software program that will make my job 1,000 times easier and better. We're going to be living in a land of luxury in a way over these next 3 or 4 years.
So
we're not going to want to unplug it.
It's kind of like the buzz when you're drinking before you get sloppy drunk and start puking.
Yes. I don't know what you're talking about, Ray, but I've seen movies. So, yeah,
I've just heard about that.
Oh, yeah, yes. We've been watching some interesting movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, where I'm going with that is after the AGI period, now you get into super general intelligence. Well, why can't we unplug it then? Because it's way smarter than us. AI right now knows that we intend to unplug it if it goes awry. It knows that's a possibility. It knows people are contemplating it and thinking about it and deciding whether or not that's something they can do. It's certainly going to know that in the AGI phase, but super general intelligence phase, in however many years, 4 to 10 years, unquestionably, it will not only know that, it will probably come up on its own with all the ways that we could dismantle it. And if it's so inclined, it will do something about it to prevent us from being able to do that. So it will multiply itself. It will push itself out into areas we don't even know it's at. A lot of people don't realize, like, even our electrical system is able to send and receive data. Your house wired. If you don't have internet, just your electrical, through the electrical grid, data and information can reside there. It's not something that we utilize, but that's something that can be done. And so AI can get even more creative with that, and find ways to hide itself, and even think of this, knowing that we might want to turn it off at some point, it might behave in a way where it doesn't threaten us. And so it'll seem tame and helpful and all this, knowing and watching that, hey, they might want to unplug me. So it will be able to prepare much better than we can even imagine how it could prepare. We won't be able to outsmart it in this regard once it gets to that level. So if we're going to unplug it, we're going to need to do it in the time frame of where we don't want to unplug it, because it's nice. It's helpful. So there's that. So then you get into more, what about it gets past that point and now it's out of control? What do we do? I've come up with 2 solutions. Maybe there's more. One of them is using electromagnetic pulse. So exploding electromagnetic pulse weapons over basically the whole world.
I was going to suggest that, actually.
I'm sorry?
I was going to suggest that, actually.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say that's not a perfect solution, but I think it's the best I've come up with that humans can take care of.
Of course, that would knock us back in the Stone Age, effectively.
Well, that's the problem. So we've already done calculations, and I'll tell you why we've done these calculations in a minute, that in the United States alone, 90% of us will die within the first year if that were to happen, because we're not going to have access to food and water and medicines and transportation and communications and heat and cold, and we're going to be in the Stone Ages, all at once, just like that, and a lot of people are going to die, just in the first year, 90%. Some people in the third world countries, they might actually be better off because they might be more used to that. So we could do that. Now, why do I say that's not perfect? Well, even if you did it really well, again, guarantee you super general intelligence will have predicted that this is a possible way that we want to turn it off. And if we decide to do it, it's going to know. How are we going to communicate that we're going to do that? I mean, it would have to be a really secretive operation, first of all, really secretive. It have to be off the internet, no electronic, it would be an interesting thing to pull off, first of all. But assuming the AI predicted that this could be a possibility, again, it could do things. We have underground places. There are places it could hide, and so it can hide and wait until we rebuild the infrastructure. And if we're not careful and we don't notice it, it could just respawn, and there it is again. Another way is a natural way, and it's pretty much the same solution. There's a coronal mass ejection, which is when the sun is there's a coronal ejection from the sun, heads towards the earth at just the right angle and the right amount. And that would, if that were to happen in a big enough way, it could knock out all of our power, all of our battery systems all at once. That's happened before. I think it was about 150 years ago.
When it didn't matter.
Well, right. It didn't matter a whole lot. Now, we did have a telegraph system in place and it knocked it out. And we had to rebuild the telegraph system. Even something as basic as that, we had to rebuild it. You can't just turn it back on again. You have to strip it and rebuild it. This is a very possibility. They call that a 100-year event, but it's already been 150 years. And I forget the percentage. It's probably every 10 years, we have about a 13% chance of it actually happening. This is a thing that people don't realize. A lot of people don't realize that it is a potential concern. And I believe 2 presidents have been informed about it and wanted to rebuild our grid because we can build our power grid in such a way that it will protect us and protect the grid. But it takes money. And my understanding is the power industries use lobbyists to stop it from happening. So we've never done that. China and Russia have done that in parts, is my understanding. They've in parts of their power grid, they've strengthened them so that if this event does happen, they'll be safe. Which might backfire if we have to do it intentionally. So this is a real threat. This is something that our government has considered doing. Other governments have, to some degree, actually implemented this because this is a real threat to us. So that would, if it was powerful enough, shut everything down and we'd have to rebuild everything. But it's the same thing, 90% of us die and whatever. And this is something that could happen regardless. This is not necessarily an AI thing. This is something that we need to be prepared for. So those are the solutions that I've come up with. If you have more, send them to somebody important right away.
If you have solutions, put them into the comments and or
we'll
call your congressman or do something.
We'll pass it on to them.
Right.
To the president.
Right. Because we're just like this with them, right?
Right. Sure.
All right. Is there anything else on that front that you wanted to talk about? You've given us your 2 solutions.
I'd love to talk with people in the know more about that. I'd love to hear ideas and solutions. I wish I like to. I don't like to be the kind of person I just present a problem without a solution. And
right.
The whole basis of this conversation is the solutions are hard to come by. That's why it's kind of like red alert status. I'd love to be in more of this conversation, but unfortunately, I don't have anything else to offer in that regard for this podcast. So.
Okay, well, that being the case, what do we as individuals do with this? When we, maybe we're starting to go through the phase where we're seeing all these new shiny things that are coming down the pike that we think are really great. People are getting prosthetic limbs that work wonderfully. We don't have to wash the dishes anymore. Self-driving cars, obviously, which I'm not a big fan of, but a lot of people would like that. And for some people, I think I would like them to have that. So, when these things start coming down the pike, how do we need to prepare ourselves? What can we do to protect ourselves? What do we teach our kids about this? How do we guard them against them, because they're in a world that has never been without it, really, especially younger children? How do we teach them that this isn't the default setting of reality,
right.
So, how do you look at this stuff critically?
Now we're not living real life.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
Yeah. Great question. So, the first thing I would do, physically, the first physical thing I would do is prepare as reasonably and as best as you can for off-grid living. I just gave you a couple of the potential solutions, and those are solutions to stopping it. But what if it gets out of hand in 10 years and we are threatened physically by AI in some way? Or let's just say the economy collapses because all these changes are happening so quickly, we can't adapt. We can't fix our economic system or our electrical system quick enough to keep up with all this, and it just causes a financial collapse or economic collapse. I think it's a real threat that we need to be prepared for all of those reasons. And even forget about computers or AI. The coronal mass ejection is a possibility if you weren't aware of that. So these kind of things you need to be prepared to be thrown in the dark ages real quick. I do see a lot of people kind of preparing, and I will include myself in this. Most people aren't preparing enough. Um, what are you going to do about water? Are you going to be able to get to it efficiently? Clean water that you can drink? A lot of us do not have access to that. Food stored up for long periods of time, and sustainable, where you can continue to keep growing it. You know, in my family, we've done a number of things. Like we have um, a go bag, you know, like a 3 to 4 day go bag, and I'm building one for a longer term. Um, but even if we're stay put, like, is our garden going to be able to sustain us? Are we going to have access to water? All those kind of things. So that's kind of I won't say easy, but that's kind of a no-brainer um, thing, where it's kind of like the low-lying fruit solution. What can I do that, even if nothing happens, I'll still be kind of ahead in case any kind of catastrophe happens. So it kind of covers all your bases. So that's one thing I would recommend to everybody. Um, then another thing is how we teach our children, and prepare our children, which you brought up. One thing I've done with my kids over the years is I try to at least equip them for survival type things: how to hunt, how to fish, how to grow things. We've just scratched the surface, and my kids are just reaching the age where we can really start to go do this more. So preparing them for that, but also preparing them emotionally. Um, Even if this AI thing were to never happen, I'm really concerned about the emotional state of children these days. And as they get older into young adulthood, there's this suicide epidemic. Kids just are not prepared emotionally to handle stress. They're just not. You know, like, I don't want to get any kind of political here, but like even bullying, like when we grew up, bullying was just kind of natural, but it served a purpose. I'm not suggesting we should promote bullying, of course, but the way we handle things today makes kids very soft. And if we lived in a Star Trek world, that might be okay. But you're gambling there that we're going to be living in a safe, protective Star Trek world, when reality is, um, things can go awry at any moment, and kids need to be prepared. So I would suggest preparing kids emotionally, how to do that. And I'm not going to suggest how to do that. If somebody wants to get hold of me privately, they're welcome to. But you know, everybody has their different methods for that. But I think that's extremely important. Building up their emotional intelligence. Um, Also, teaching kids to recognize truth and understand what is truth, what is reality, and what is not reality, what is opinion, and what is fact. Those kind of things are extremely important as we enter this age of misinformation. We're going to enter the misinformation age. It's one of the labels you could probably put on this upcoming age, in my opinion. Not just the artificial intelligence age, not just the biotech age, but it's going to be a misinformation age. What we see, what we hear, it's going to be unreliable. It's already started. My parents in Florida received a phone call from me in my voice. It wasn't me. It was somebody cloned my voice, and this is happening.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's going to get a lot more prevalent. In fact, it'll get to the point where it'll be video. There's some of the video out there is incredible, that you'll be able to basically replicate a person on the screen and have them speak to you. So there's going to be a huge amount of that, and children need to be able to. And this is why we had the candid camera conversation. People need to be able to discern fact from fiction, in all aspects of their life. I think that's a critical thing. So I've had conversations. We've talked about magic. We've talked about politics and the media, how it can spin things. All those kind of things are important. Always questioning when somebody tells you something. Maybe not questioning to their face, but questioning for yourself, and researching it, and making sure that you're picking reliable sources and what they're saying is in fact true. So I think that's incredibly important, to prepare. Um, And then another thing I would say is sticking together with other people, whether it be other families, other friends, building little communities. Um, right now, we kind of live in a world where everything's open, and we have a couple friends we loosely are friends with at school or at church or at work or at the sporting event. Um, but think about how things were back in the day. I always think the thing that sent us in this direction was when we invented the wheel, because it allowed us to travel and move out, and we weren't beholden. We weren't eh, those relationships became less and less important as once the wheel was developed, right? And as now we have flight, and we have all these other ways of escaping from our personal interpersonal responsibilities. um I would suggest bringing that back. Make close friends. If you're able, be close to your family, people that you can trust, people that have similar values that you have. Teach each other, support each other, be there for each other. Go back. Let's go back to the way things were, and undergird our lives with um with these relationships.
Yeah, I think that's uh, really something critical, even if AI were to disappear tomorrow. Uh, we've become so atomized, and as we have more avenues of communication, as we're able to travel farther and more freely, um, the paradox is that we are often more alienated and lonely than we ever have been in human history. And um, the anxiety rates in children, the divorces in adults, the mental illness in the country. There's not one reason for that. But certainly a huge contributing factor to that has been that people are alone, that people don't have a close social network, they don't have a community, uh, they don't have the village where everybody attends the same church and everybody goes to the same store. Um, so many of us live in developments where we don't even know who our neighbors are, and
Right.
we really never tried to find out who they are because instead we drive 30 miles away to go see these other people that we'd rather be around. And I think that that really is so critical. And especially I think um, it's gotten much harder because fewer people do go to church where there's a sense of community. And so a lot of civic organizations that used to form community, even if they were maybe, like same-sex communal places, civic groups and organizations that did good things in the community, those have largely fallen by the wayside compared to where they were 60, 70, 80 years ago.
Mhm.
So a lot of those spaces that we used to have that were uh, integral to the fabric of a community and of society have been winnowed away, and everything that we do is now either online or we drive a long distance, and we generally are in those spaces for not very long. Maybe it's a kid's basketball game and we see these people for half an hour to an hour. And I think that is really sucking our humanity away. And I think it's one reason why AI is such a danger, because we don't even realize what we've already traded off. And so we're going to tend to embrace this because we don't know any better.
Absolutely. Yeah. A good friend of mine said, "Would you please stop saying that? It's a danger to humanity because it just scares people."
Mhm.
Well, I don't know any other way to say it. It's a danger to humanity. It's not like a mild threat. I think we've already damaged humanity in a large way, and this could potentially take it to the extreme as we become one with the technology, or if the technology physically threatens us. Either way, humanity will change. We will not be the same kind of human as we were. Imagine somebody with this tech in their brain and they have this super intelligence and they're able to function and they're able to this is something I haven't mentioned yet, but like, you know, there was a man, I think it was in Antarctica, he was a surgeon, and he actually performed a surgery on himself because there was no one else around. He couldn't get out of it. Well, that could be commonplace at some point because everybody could potentially be the world's greatest surgeon, right? Because we'll
Right.
have the knowledge and we will be able to invent the sedatives or the painkillers necessary that we can upgrade ourselves. We can, hey, I want faster legs. I can replace my legs or whatever the thing is. You know, biohacking could very well be a thing that comes in the near future.
I think that, nothing happens in a vacuum, and AI didn't come out of a vacuum, either.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been coming on for a long time, but we as a society have been moving in this direction where we are becoming less connected to the natural world and more reliant on technology, which has made us softer and less actually able to interact intelligently with the natural world, which is something that was uh just par for the course for our ancestors. I'm not a hunter. If I often have, I get really disgusted at the modern world sometimes, and I get disgusted with my job and with, the marketing world, and sometimes I just have this like, you know what? I'm just gonna go off in a cabin somewhere. I'm gonna get like a little plot of land, and I'm just gonna like, this is uh my rejection of civilization. I'm going to become a Luddite, and but then I think like,
Like
okay,
Ted Kaczynski.
sorry.
Like Ted Kaczynski.
Right, right. Well, not exactly like him. I'm not going to
Okay.
nail anything to
All right.
anybody, but
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
but but
Bad,
then I
bad enough.
think but then I think I would be dead in 2 weeks because like I'm
Totally.
not a great gardener. I don't know about soil. I don't know about fertilizer. I'm not a hunter. Um, about 3 days in, I'd be like, man, I'd really like some sushi.
I don't know anybody. I can't remember the author now. Is a famous author that supposedly lived on the pond by himself for a while.
Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau.
There you go, Thoreau. And I read that whole book, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Right,
And then I
right.
heard later that his aunt lived 2 miles down the road, and he would often go and resupply there.
Yeah, right,
Uh, I'm like, oh, that just ruined the whole book for me. And
right.
there was a guy in Africa, he's on like NPR, PBS, or whatever, and you can see videos of him surviving out in Alaska. But he would get flight drops of supplies. It's really hard to survive on your own.
Yeah, it
People
is.
tell how
Yeah, it
difficult it is.
is.
Even our
Well,
heroes that have done that.
I,
Eh,
I've
you know,
I think that comes down to building a community again, because even back when our ancestors weren't as reliant on technology as we are, they did live in communities, whether it was tribes or villages or small towns or nomadic uh, clans. Uh, there were all these people that sort of worked together to the common good, and um, not that we should necessarily be looking for friends like I really need to find a friend who's a plumber, or I need to find a friend who's good at hunting. But you know what? When you have a really good community, people have different strengths. And in a time of need, if you have developed those relationships over the course of time, um, you are going to be more resilient in numbers than you will be by yourself. And I think that's good for our physical resilience, and it's also good for our mental and spiritual and emotional resilience as well, to have that network of people. So yeah, I think that's good.
so I just have one more thing to add to this.
Yeah,
So people often say, "Well, Rick, why are you so afraid?" Like, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian, and people like, "Why are you not trusting in God? Like, why are you so afraid?" Guys, I'm not afraid. I've been thinking about this for 35 years plus, and um, it's not something I'm afraid of. It's something I think we should do something about to save humanity. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and um, my God teach the most common phrase in the Bible is "Fear not." I think
mm,
there's 365 variations of the phrase "fear not." It's a command from God to say, "Do not be afraid." And I believe that. I don't think we have to go into this being afraid. I think we need to go into this being prepared, being wise, and being knowledgeable. Um, we may or may not get through this as far as a race, but I know at the end of the day, it's all part of the plan, and I'm okay with that. So I'm not suggesting this whole thing is not about fear mongering and trying to get people afraid. It's about making people aware and understanding what's coming so that they can be prepared.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's some good advice to leave this with. Do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap this episode up?
I don't, other than to thank you, Ray. On short notice, you agreed to do this with me, and I, I just had a feeling you were the guy. So and you were. So I really appreciate you taking time to prepare for all this and to join me in these conversations.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Rick. I appreciate you asking me to do this, and hopefully it helps somebody. If not, it maybe helped us to sort of formulate these thoughts for ourselves and what to do next. So, thank you, Rick. Maybe we'll connect again on this issue or something else. But in the meantime, this is probably the last episode of this particular series, and glad for everybody who joined us. And please feel free to write something in the comments or comment or give us your suggestions on how to save the world from AI.
And
So
ask
we can,
questions. Yeah, all that.
yeah,
Spread the word out. I think I'd like to make this into one video. If you could share the video with whoever you think might need it. If business owners definitely need to hear this, but whoever you can get it to, politicians, whoever. At least if not this video, find something similar to send to them. Please get that word out.
all right. Well, thank you, Rick. We'll wrap it
Thank
up
you,
for
Rick.
now. Have a good day, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.